In today's cybersecurity landscape, understanding the tactics adversaries use is critical to protecting your systems and networks. This video will break down the reconnaissance phase, focusing on the specific methods attackers use to gather intelligence before launching an attack. You'll learn how they scan networks, gather victim information, and exploit weaknesses in organizational structures. By the end of this video, you'll have a solid understanding of how these tactics work and how to recognize them in action. You'll be able to differentiate between scanning methods, identity gathering techniques, and how attackers map out their targets. So, take notes, stay focused, and maybe grab a coffee. This is essential knowledge for anyone serious about cybersecurity. Let's dive in.
Did you know that 90% of successful cyber attacks start with reconnaissance? This critical phase is the first step in many sophisticated attacks, where attackers gather vital information that sets the stage for their intrusion. In the realm of cybersecurity, tactics are the overarching strategies attackers employ to achieve their objectives during an attack or intrusion. These tactics can vary widely depending on the attacker's goals, the target, and the specific context of the attack. They are integral to a broader framework that helps categorize and understand the various phases of an attack, such as the MITRE ATT and CK framework, which outlines specific tactics and techniques employed by adversaries. Today, we're delving into one of the foundational tactics in cybersecurity, reconnaissance. This phase encompasses a variety of techniques that adversaries use to actively or passively gather critical information about their targets. This can include details about the victim organization's structure, infrastructure, technologies in use, and even key personnel. Such intelligence is invaluable as it informs the attacker's subsequent actions, whether that be planning for initial access, prioritizing objectives after a compromise, or even conducting further reconnaissance to refine their approach. In this video, we'll explore the various techniques employed in the reconnaissance phase, providing insights into their implementation and real-world use cases. Here are some key techniques that we will cover. 1. Active reconnaissance. This involves directly interacting with the target system to gather information, such as port scanning or querying domain information. For instance, tools like MAP are commonly used for this purpose. 2. Passive reconnaissance. In contrast, this technique entails gathering information without direct interaction. Attackers might analyze publicly available data, such as social media profiles or websites, to build a picture of the target. 3. Social engineering. Techniques such as phishing can also be seen as a form of reconnaissance, where attackers manipulate individuals to disclose sensitive information. 4. Footprinting. This involves collecting data about the target's network architecture and technology stack, often through WHOIS lookups or DNS interrogation. 5. OS and open source intelligence. Attackers leverage publicly available information from various sources, including news articles, forums, and even academic publications, to gather insights about their targets. These are just the techniques under reconnaissance, but they are part of a broader range of tactics attackers use throughout an attack. Here's a preview of the main tactics we'll cover in future videos. Resource development, initial access, execution, persistence, privilege escalation, defense evasion, credential access, discovery, lateral movement, collection, command and control, exfiltration, impact. By understanding each phase, we gain a comprehensive view of the adversary's tactics. Make sure to subscribe for deep dives into each phase, starting with reconnaissance, where attackers take the very first steps in their strategy. Now, let's dive into reconnaissance techniques, their implementation, and real-world examples.
Tactic T1595. Active scanning is a reconnaissance method where adversaries execute active scans to gather information that can be used during targeting. Active scans involve directly probing victim infrastructure via network traffic, which differentiates it from passive reconnaissance, where no interaction occurs. Active scanning provides attackers with direct insights into the target environment, making it a key tactic in identifying potential access points. Under T1595, there are several specific techniques. Tactic T1595.001, Scanning IP Blocks. In this approach, adversaries scan victim IP blocks to collect information about the target's network. Organizations are often assigned public IP addresses in blocks or ranges, so when an attacker identifies a single IP address associated with a target, they can scan the entire range. This technique is beneficial for identifying all publicly accessible assets within an organization's IP block, potentially revealing more systems to target and entry points to explore. Tactic T1595.002 Vulnerability Scanning. Here, adversaries conduct vulnerability scans on the target's infrastructure to discover potential weaknesses. These scans typically assess whether the configurations of target hosts or applications, such as software versions or specific services, align with known vulnerabilities. Attackers frequently use vulnerability scanning tools to identify low-hanging fruit, exploitable weaknesses that may not have been patched. This enables them to target systems with specific exploits, making it a highly effective tactic for discovering security gaps. Tactic T1595.003 Wordlist Scanning. This technique involves probing the target's infrastructure with word lists using brute forcing and crawling tactics. Unlike brute force attacks aimed at cracking credentials, wordlist scanning seeks to discover hidden content and structure within a target systems, such as directories or specific files. The word lists may contain common terms, file extensions, or even custom terms related to the target organization. Attackers may develop custom word lists based on data gathered from other reconnaissance techniques, like analyzing public information from the organization's websites, allowing them to identify resources and files within the target system that may otherwise remain hidden. Each of these active scanning tactics under T1595 is designed to reveal different layers of information about the target, enabling attackers to map out systems, find vulnerabilities, and uncover hidden resources, valuable insights for later stages of an attack. Another essential reconnaissance tactic is T1592, Gather Victim Host Information. In this method, adversaries collect detailed data on a target's hosts, gathering insights that can be instrumental during targeting. This information might encompass host names, assigned IP addresses, roles, and specifics around configuration, such as operating systems and language settings. By understanding a target's host infrastructure, attackers can refine their strategies, tailoring exploits to fit identified host characteristics. Under T1592, there are several subtechniques that allow for a deeper level of host information gathering. Tactic T1592.001 Hardware. In this subtechnique, adversaries gather specific details about the target's host hardware, such as types and versions of hardware components. They may also look for additional defensive components like biometric readers or encryption hardware, which can reveal insights about the target's security setup. Knowing the hardware layout of the host environment helps attackers plan their approach and select tools accordingly. Tactic T1592.002 Software. Here, attackers collect data on the software installed across the target's hosts. This may include software types, versions, and any added security components, such as antivirus programs or CM tools. By understanding the software landscape, attackers can pinpoint outdated or vulnerable applications and assess the level of defensive software they may encounter. Tactic T1592.003 Firmware. In this technique, adversaries focus on firmware details, gathering information on firmware types and versions. This level of data reveals insights into device configuration, purpose, and age or patch levels, which may hint at potential vulnerabilities. Older firmware, for example, might be susceptible to known exploits, while newer firmware could indicate patched or hardened systems. Tactic T1592.004 Client Configurations. Finally, adversaries may seek information on the target's client configurations, such as the operating system version, architecture, 32 or 64-bit, virtualization details, language, and time zone. These configurations help attackers understand the target's environment and tailor their techniques for compatibility and evasion. Each of these gather victim host information techniques under T1592 equips adversaries with a nuanced understanding of the host environment, enabling them to make informed decisions on exploitation tactics and payload customization. Another critical reconnaissance tactic is T1589, gather victim identity information. In this approach, adversaries collect data on a target's identity, which can be used to enhance targeting efforts. Identity information might include a variety of details such as personal data, employee names, email addresses, and responses to security questions, as well as sensitive elements like credentials and multi-factor authentication (MFA) settings. This type of information allows attackers to personalize their strategies, increasing the chances of successful social engineering or unauthorized access. Under T1589, there are specific subtechniques for gathering different types of identity-related information. Tactic T1589.001. Credentials. Adversaries may seek to obtain account credentials related to the target organization. These credentials might be directly linked to the organization or personal accounts that share passwords with business accounts. By capturing usernames and passwords, attackers can leverage password reuse, a common vulnerability where users apply the same password across multiple accounts to access systems, especially if users have reused personal credentials on corporate platforms. Tactic T1589.002. Email addresses. In this technique, attackers gather email addresses linked to the target organization. Even if internal email systems are used, many organizations have public-facing email addresses for employees, which can be valuable for spearphishing or other social engineering tactics. Public email addresses make it easier for attackers to identify and impersonate employees or establish contact under false pretenses, allowing them to further infiltrate the organization. Tactic T1589.003. Employee names. Here, adversaries collect employee names within the target organization. This information helps attackers craft more personalized and believable lures, often for phishing or other social engineering attacks. Employee names can also be used to derive email addresses and identify high-value individuals within the organization, such as executives or administrators, for further targeting. Each of these gather victim identity information techniques under T1589 allows attackers to build a detailed profile of their target, enabling them to conduct highly targeted and convincing attacks. By leveraging identity data, adversaries can enhance their approach, exploiting weaknesses in personal and corporate boundaries. Another important reconnaissance tactic is T1590, gather victim network information. This method involves adversaries collecting data about a target's network, which can aid in identifying access points and planning an effective attack. Information about a network may include administrative data, such as IP ranges and domain names, as well as specific insights into the network's topology and operations. By understanding the network's layout and defensive posture, attackers can better strategize their approach. Under T1590, there are several specialized techniques for gathering network-related information. Tactic T1590.001. Domain properties. In this subtechnique, adversaries gather information on the target's network domains. This might include details about the domains the organization owns, administrative data like the domain registrar, and actionable information such as contact emails, phone numbers, business addresses, and name servers. Such domain property information can provide attackers with entry points and help them craft more credible, targeted lures. Tactic T1590.002 DNS. Here, attackers focus on gathering domain name system (DNS) information, including registered name servers and various records that map out the target subdomains, mail servers, and other hosts. DNS records, such as MX, TXT, and SPF, may also reveal dependencies on third-party cloud services or SaaS providers, such as Office 365, G Suite, or Salesforce. This insight helps adversaries understand how traffic flows in and out of the organization's network and the infrastructure that may be leveraged in an attack. Tactic T1590.003. Network trust dependencies. With this technique, adversaries gather data on network trust dependencies, relationships with third-party organizations or domains, such as managed service providers or contractors, which may have access to the target's network. Knowledge of these connections is valuable, as trust relationships can provide additional points of entry, especially if third parties have elevated access within the network. Tactic T1590.004. Network Topology. In this subtechnique, adversaries seek to understand the network's topology, including the physical and logical structure of both external-facing and internal environments. Attackers may look for details about network devices, such as routers and gateways, and other infrastructure. By mapping out the network topology, attackers can identify key components and pathways that might be exploited for unauthorized access or data exfiltration. Tactic T1590.005. IP addresses. Here, adversaries gather information about the target's public IP addresses, which are often allocated in blocks or sequential ranges. Information on IP addresses in use can provide clues about the organization's size, physical locations, and how its public infrastructure is hosted. These insights can help attackers identify which IPs are in use and where to focus their efforts to infiltrate the network. Tactic T1590.006. Network Security Appliances. Lastly, adversaries may collect information on the target's network security appliances, such as firewalls, content filters, proxies, and other network-based defenses. Knowledge about specific security appliances can inform attackers about the level of protection in place and help them plan ways to circumvent these defenses. Adversaries may also look for details on intrusion detection systems, IDS, or other security appliances that monitor network traffic, providing insights into potential blind spots. Each of these gather victim network information techniques under T1590 allows attackers to build a detailed map of the target's network, its defenses, and its dependencies, making it easier to execute precise and effective attacks while avoiding detection. Another important reconnaissance tactic is T1591. Gather victim organization information. In this tactic, adversaries gather extensive information about a target organization's structure, business operations, and key personnel. Such organizational knowledge gives attackers insights into how the business operates, which departments are critical, and which employees hold positions of influence or access to sensitive resources. This information allows adversaries to craft more convincing and precisely targeted strategies that can lead to better chances of successful infiltration or data exfiltration. Under T1591, adversaries employ several specialized subtechniques to extract different types of organizational information. Tactic T1591.001. Determine physical locations. Here, adversaries gather information about the target's physical locations. This includes data on where offices, data centers, or other infrastructure components are located. Physical location data can reveal operational hubs, critical infrastructure, and where sensitive resources are stored. Additionally, knowing the location provides insights into the legal jurisdiction and regulatory environment governing the target, which may influence the attacker's methods. For example, specific locations may have privacy laws or data protection regulations that could either complicate or aid an adversary's actions. This location intelligence is especially useful for threat actors who might plan physical attacks or social engineering encounters on site. Tactic T1591.002. Business relationships. Adversaries may also target information about the organization's business relationships, including affiliations with managed service providers, contractors, suppliers, or other third parties with network access. Knowing these connections can reveal dependencies and even potential weak points, as third-party organizations often have access to internal networks or sensitive data. By exploiting these relationships, adversaries may find alternate routes into the target's environment through trusted third-party systems, which could be less protected. This tactic also enables attackers to map out the organization's supply chain, gaining insight into shipment routes for physical and digital assets, which could offer additional attack vectors. Tactic T1591.003. Identify business tempo. Business tempo refers to the rhythm and timing of an organization's operations, such as working hours, peak productivity times, and patterns around purchasing or resource management. By gathering this information, adversaries can time their attacks to coincide with periods of high or low activity, such as overnight shifts or major product launches, when security teams may be less vigilant. An understanding of business tempo also allows attackers to predict certain patterns, like when shipments are most likely to arrive, enabling them to plan targeted attacks at key moments, such as supply chain interception or resource-focused phishing attempts. Tactic T1591.004. Identify roles. Finally, adversaries may collect detailed information about roles within the organization, identifying key personnel who have access to sensitive systems or data. This tactic helps attackers identify high-value targets like executives, system administrators, or IT personnel with elevated privileges. By knowing who holds critical roles and their access levels, adversaries can craft highly specific social engineering attacks to trick employees into revealing information, sharing credentials, or even performing actions on behalf of the attacker. This knowledge enables a more customized and potentially more effective infiltration strategy. Collectively, gather victim organization information techniques under T1591 enable adversaries to gain a complete picture of how a target organization operates and who the key stakeholders are. With these insights, attackers can create precise attack plans that exploit both human and technical vulnerabilities. Moving on, let's explore tactic T1598, phishing for information. In this technique, adversaries use phishing messages with the primary goal of gathering sensitive information from the target rather than installing malware or other malicious software. Phishing for information is different from traditional phishing in that it specifically aims to collect actionable data, like credentials, security answers, or privileged access details. Adversaries typically use psychological manipulation techniques, known as social engineering, to make their requests appear credible and urgent, increasing the likelihood that the target will divulge the information. Under T1598, adversaries employ multiple subtechniques to optimize information gathering efforts through phishing methods. Tactic T1598.001. Spearphishing service. In this subtechnique, attackers send phishing emails via trusted third-party services. These emails often appear to come from legitimate sources and use social engineering to create a sense of urgency or credibility. For example, an attacker might pose as an IT provider requesting verification of account credentials, or a customer service representative needing personal details to complete a process. The use of a third-party service enhances the legitimacy of the message, as users are more likely to trust emails that appear to originate from established platforms. This technique is effective because it takes advantage of the familiarity and trust that users have with these platforms, making them more likely to disclose information. Tactic T1590.002. Spearphishing attachment. In this method, phishing emails include an attachment that appears to be a standard file, such as a PDF, Word document, or Excel sheet, which supposedly requires the recipient's attention. These attachments might serve as lures, containing prompts for the recipient to input credentials, fill out forms, or provide additional data. While the primary intent is information gathering rather than malware distribution, the attachment may contain further instructions that guide users to disclose sensitive details. Attackers may employ urgent language or pose as an authority figure to pressure the target into interacting with the attachment. Tactic T1598.003. Spearphishing link. This approach uses phishing emails with embedded links that redirect recipients to fake websites designed to capture information. These websites often mimic well-known login pages or company portals, where the target is prompted to enter their credentials or other personal information. By carefully designing the link's landing page, attackers can make it appear highly realistic, increasing the likelihood of a successful deception. Techniques like creating urgency, offering incentives, or claiming an account issue can increase the target's compliance with requests to click on the link and provide the requested data. Tactic T1598.004. Spearphishing voice. Also known as vishing, this subtechnique uses voice communications to phish for information. Adversaries may call the target posing as a representative from a trusted organization, such as a bank or internal IT department, to elicit sensitive details. During the call, attackers employ social engineering tactics to create urgency, for example, by suggesting there's a security risk or a need to verify account details immediately. Voice phishing can be especially effective because it enables attackers to build rapport, address concerns in real time, and maintain the illusion of credibility, making it easier to coax sensitive information out of the target. Each of these phishing for information techniques under T1598 allows adversaries to manipulate trust, leverage urgency, and use social engineering across multiple platforms. By crafting phishing messages that specifically aim to collect sensitive information, adversaries can gather the data needed to execute more advanced attacks or gain unauthorized access to systems, increasing the threat's overall impact. One of the most important tactics is T1597. Search closed sources. Building on the various methods adversaries use to gather publicly available information, such as active scanning or domain searches, another effective tactic is to delve into closed sources, which provide more exclusive, private, or restricted data. While open sources like public DNS or WHOIS databases offer valuable insights, closed sources are often more comprehensive and detailed, providing adversaries with a deeper understanding of their target's infrastructure. These sources typically include paid databases, subscription-based threat intelligence feeds, or even less reputable options found on the dark web and cybercrime black markets. By leveraging these closed sources, adversaries can access data that's not freely available to the public, helping them refine their targeting and attack strategies. The information gathered from these sources could include everything from industry-specific breach trends to precise technical details about vulnerabilities, which can be used to exploit weaknesses in a target's network or systems. T1597.001. Threat Intel Vendors. A key technique under T1597 is searching private data from threat intelligence vendors. These vendors offer paid feeds and portals that provide much more detailed data than what can be found in public sources. Subscribing to these services allows adversaries to access highly specific intelligence, which can include attribution claims about which threat actor groups are targeting specific industries or organizations, trends regarding breach methods and the TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures used in successful attacks, information on successful countermeasures and defensive techniques implemented by organizations, which adversaries can use to adjust their approach. Although sensitive details such as customer names or specific identifiers are often redacted for privacy, these feeds still offer valuable intelligence. By studying these detailed reports, adversaries can gain actionable insights into the types of vulnerabilities being targeted and adjust their strategy accordingly. T1597.002. Purchase technical data. Another subtechnique of T1597 involves purchasing technical data about victims. This data is available through reputable private sources such as paid subscriptions to scan databases or data aggregation services. These sources often provide in-depth technical details about a target's online presence, such as active IP addresses and the services running on them, network configurations, open ports, and software versions used within the target's infrastructure. In addition to these more legitimate private sources, adversaries may also turn to the dark web or cybercrime black markets, where they can purchase highly specific data, sometimes including information about previously exploited vulnerabilities or compromised credentials. Though less reputable and riskier, these sources can offer a treasure trove of valuable data to refine their attacks. T1596. Search open technical databases. While adversaries are gathering information from closed sources, they also make extensive use of publicly available technical databases. T1596. Search open technical databases allows adversaries to gather essential technical details about their target, but without requiring payment or private access. These databases often provide critical data on domains, certificates, and network information that can be leveraged for more advanced reconnaissance. While not as detailed as the information found in closed sources, open technical databases still offer a wealth of information that adversaries can use to map out a victim's digital infrastructure, identify potential vulnerabilities, and build a more targeted attack plan. T1596.001 DNS/passive DNS. One of the primary resources for gathering open-source intelligence is passive DNS data. Adversaries may query DNS records to gather a variety of details, such as the name servers for a victim's domains, subdomains and mail servers that could be potential attack vectors, other hosts and services associated with the victim's domain infrastructure. By analyzing DNS data, adversaries can uncover which cloud services or third-party platforms the victim is using, as well as identify entry points for further exploitation. This technique provides valuable context about the victim's public-facing infrastructure and helps attackers strategize their next move. T1596.002 WHOIS. Another critical open-source database that adversaries may turn to is WHOIS data. WHOIS records are publicly accessible and can reveal crucial details about a registered domain, including IP block allocations, providing insight into the victim's network infrastructure, contact information of domain owners, including email addresses and phone numbers that could be used in social engineering attacks, name servers used by the domain, which may indicate which third-party services are in play, such as cloud providers or DNS hosting services. This data helps adversaries map out the network of the target, revealing further attack opportunities and providing information on how to engage with or impersonate key contacts within the organization. T1596.003 Digital Certificates. Adversaries can also leverage public digital certificates to obtain information about a victim's cryptographic infrastructure. Certificates are issued by trusted authorities to verify the authenticity of digital communications, such as encrypted web traffic, HTTPS. These certificates contain valuable metadata, such as the organization's name and location, which can help adversaries understand the victim's operational reach or even infer the region where critical assets are located. Expiration dates and subject alternative names, which might reveal additional subdomains or the presence of multiple digital assets tied to the organization. By searching through digital certificate repositories, adversaries can gather critical details that might help them craft more convincing phishing or man-in-the-middle attacks, or even exploit weaknesses in the cryptographic implementations used by their targets. T1596.004 CDNs. Adversaries may also look into Content Delivery Network, CDN, data to understand how a victim's content is distributed across the Internet. CDNs help organizations accelerate the delivery of content by using a distributed network of servers. Analyzing CDN data can reveal the geographical distribution of content servers, providing clues to the victim's regional operations or where key infrastructure is located. Custom content delivery configurations, which could indicate the types of technologies and services the victim relies on for web hosting or customer interaction. This insight can be used to assess the victim's digital footprint and identify areas that might be vulnerable to disruption or further exploitation. T1596.005 Scan databases. Lastly, scan databases offer another rich source of publicly available information. Various services publish the results of internet-wide scans and surveys that aggregate details on active systems, such as IP addresses and host names, which can be linked to specific organizations. Open ports, which may reveal running services and expose vulnerabilities. Server banners and protocol versions, which can indicate outdated or vulnerable software. By analyzing scan databases, adversaries can identify which systems are actively exposed on the Internet and gather actionable intelligence to facilitate exploitation. By utilizing both T1597, search closed sources, and T1596, search open technical databases, adversaries can assemble an incredibly detailed picture of their targets, combining high-level threat intelligence with in-depth technical details from both public and private resources. Whether purchasing highly specific technical data from commercial vendors or searching open DNS, WHOIS, or scan databases, these techniques are essential for crafting sophisticated and effective attacks. Moving on to T1593, search open websites/domains. As adversaries move beyond closed sources and technical databases, They often expand their reconnaissance to include open websites and domains. This tactic, T1593, search open websites/domains, involves gathering information from freely available sources on the web, such as public websites, social media platforms, news sites, and other publicly accessible resources. These sources can reveal a wealth of details about a victim's operations, including information about their personnel, business activities, and even specific vulnerabilities that could be exploited. Adversaries can find valuable intelligence through various forms of publicly available content, from staff and leadership details to high-level organizational changes. By scraping these open resources, attackers can learn about upcoming business deals, hiring trends, or new projects, which can provide insight into potential targets within the victim's infrastructure. T1593.001 Social Media. One of the most popular and valuable open-source channels adversaries use is social media. Platforms like LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and others often contain a variety of useful information about individuals and organizations. Through social media, adversaries can learn about employee names, roles, and professional affiliations, which help craft more convincing social engineering tactics, such as phishing or spearphishing attacks. Employee interests and personal connections, which could be leveraged to create more credible impersonations or identify patterns in organizational communication. Company updates, including new hires, product launches, acquisitions, or mergers, all of which might indicate changes in security posture or potential gaps to exploit. By observing employee behavior and business activities on social media, attackers can identify key targets, recognize vulnerabilities, and tailor their strategies to exploit the organization's shifting landscape. T1590.002 Search Engines. Another way adversaries gather information is by using search engines to explore publicly indexed websites. Search engines like Google, Bing, or specialized engines such as Shodan offer a wealth of information through their ability to index and categorize vast amounts of content across the web. By utilizing advanced search queries or specific syntaxes, adversaries can focus on particular types of content that may be relevant for their targeting. Some common tactics include searching for specific file types, e.g., PDFs, Excel sheets, that might contain sensitive business information, project data, or contracts. Using advanced operators to locate hidden directories or unprotected files that have been indexed by search engines. Identifying business-related keywords that indicate partnerships, supplier relationships, or even financial vulnerabilities. By honing in on specialized data through search engines, adversaries can gather tactical information that was unintentionally exposed on the web. T1593.003 Code Repositories. Another crucial resource for open-source intelligence gathering is public code repositories. Platforms like GitHub, GitLab, SourceForge, and Bitbucket host repositories containing source code, software libraries, and development projects that might contain sensitive information. Adversaries often search these repositories to discover API keys, credentials, or private configuration details accidentally committed by developers in the code. Vulnerabilities in software libraries or system configurations that could be exploited if used by the target organization. Documentation or project files that may reference company infrastructure, internal tools, or partnerships. Exposing sensitive data such as passwords or private keys in public repositories is a common mistake that can be leveraged by adversaries to gain access to an organization's systems. By searching code repositories, attackers can uncover valuable technical information that could directly facilitate a breach. The last tactic we're going to be talking about today is T1594, search victim-owned websites. Adversaries may search websites owned by the victim for information that can be used during targeting. Victim-owned websites may contain valuable details such as names of departments or divisions, physical locations, and data about key employees, including their names, roles, and contact information, e.g., email addresses. Additionally, these sites can reveal insights into business operations and relationships, which adversaries can exploit for further attacks. Now, let's quickly recap the key tactics involved, so you can grasp their differences and how each one plays a crucial role in the reconnaissance phase. This will help you understand how adversaries gather information at various levels to effectively target their victims. T1595, active scanning. Adversaries use active scanning techniques to probe a victim's network for useful information. This includes scanning IP blocks, vulnerability scanning, and wordlist scanning to identify potential weaknesses or areas of exploitation. T1592, gather victim host information. Adversaries gather detailed information about victim hosts including hardware, software, firmware, and client configurations to understand the victim's environment and identify vulnerabilities. T1589, gather victim identity information. Adversaries collect identity information such as credentials, email addresses, and employee names to target individuals and gain access to systems or data. T1590, gather victim network information. Adversaries gather network-related information, including IP addresses, domain properties, DNS records, and network topology to map the victim's network and find exploitable entry points. T1591, gather victim org information. Adversaries collect information about the victim's organization, including business relationships, roles, and physical locations, to better understand the target and its structure. T1598, phishing for information. Adversaries use phishing techniques to gather sensitive data, including credentials and personal information, by tricking victims into revealing details through email, voice, or malicious links/attachments. T1597, search closed sources. Adversaries search closed sources like threat intelligence vendors and technical data providers to gather purchased or restricted information about victims that can aid in targeting. T1596, search open technical databases. Adversaries use open technical databases, such as DNS records, WHOIS data, and digital certificates, to gather freely available victim information to aid in targeting. T1593, search open websites/domains. Adversaries search open websites and social media to find publicly available information about the victim, such as employee roles, locations, and business operations. T1594, search victim-owned websites. Adversaries gather information from victim-owned websites, including employee details, department names, and business operations, to identify further targets and organizational structure. Thanks for watching, and I hope this breakdown of reconnaissance tactics gave you a deeper understanding of how adversaries gather vital information during their attacks. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more in-depth cybersecurity content. Also, don't forget to hit the notification bell so you're the first to know when we drop the next video in this series. If you have any questions or insights, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, keep your defenses strong, stay informed, and keep learning. See you in the next one.